just over the state line from Pennsylvania into New York, on Lake Chautauqua, near Lake Erie in Erie, Pennsylvania, is Chautauqua Institution, where Sharon and I have vacationed every year for over 30 years for 1 week out of the summer. 2 years ago, we weren't able to go because I had been in an accident and was in the hospital. Last year, we were not able to go because we waited too long to make our reservations. This year, we were ready to go. And just this week, the entire season has been canceled because of the coronavirus. We're deeply disappointed, but we understand. Today, however, I don't want to talk about the virus. I want to talk about the meaning and significance of a place like Chautauqua to my growth and spiritual development. To understand it, however, how important it is, I must go back a bit to the very beginning. Step back and gaze upon the whole of creation, because there begins to unfold the significance of Chautauqua to me. And what is it where I begin with creation? An understanding of all that is as created by God. I know no other way to describe creation than as creation, including our galaxy, all the universes, everything that is in it. I have no other word to use than that it is created. Everything that is in its thingness is sacred. That is my core belief, the sacredness of all things. From the very first encounter at the Big Bang, nature was revealing the glory and goodness of the divine presence. These are words of Richard Rohr. From the very first moment of the Big Bang, nature was revealing the glory and goodness of the divine presence. Many people refer to creation as the first incarnation. The only way I know to look at it, as I said, is to see all of it as sacred. Chautauqua helps bring that home to me. As we face the crises of climate change, to me, the only way to understand what we are doing is to see it from the point of all things as sacred. We must move away from the utilitarian aspect of creation, where everything is there to be used by us and exploited by us, to an awareness that we are all interrelated, that we are one life together. And out of that one life together, we build and live our lives. The psalmist says, you stretch out the heavens like a tent. You set the beams of your chambers on the waters. You make the clouds your chariot. You ride the wings of the wind. You set the earth on its foundation so that it shall never be shaken. May the glory of the Lord endure forever. I will sing to the Lord as long as I live, for I rejoice in the Lord. Psalm 104. Walt Whitman, in one of the lines from his Leaves of Grass, says, I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars, reflecting that interconnectedness, that relatedness, and how we must see ourselves in the world as part of the world. That's the first thing. That all is sacred. That mountain is sacred. That blade of grass is sacred. That person who seems so unlike us is sacred. That stone, that leaf is sacred. It is all sacred, created by God. The second point that I would make is that it is not only sacred, but all of life is endowed with God's Spirit. Because that is so, because we see God's Spirit through creation. As I said at the beginning, creation is the first incarnation. And just as Jesus was incarnated in the flesh, so God's Spirit is incarnated in all that is. Because that is so, and this is so important, we can speak of creation as listening. There's a story about Howard Thurman, who was many years, I believe, the chaplain at Howard University, and has been called the theologian of the civil rights movement. But in a story told by Howard Thurman, he talks about a tree on his property, an oak tree, and that he could go out to this tree, and just the way the trunk was, it fit perfectly into the contours of his back. And he said he would sit down and lean against the trunk of that tree, and he would talk to it. He would tell the tree what was going on. And here's the point. He said he felt and still believed that tree heard him. I believe that. The tree listened. Now, it is absolutely true. But the only way to understand it is not through a form of literalism, but in some other way, in some other mystery of faith and mystery of truth, perhaps better revealed to us through the poets and the artists. There is a way in which creation listens. That's why you can go out in a garden park or walk through a woods, and you can unburden your soul, and you feel yourself beginning to be centered, because all around you, creation listens. When I was a young boy, I would play in my grandparents' side backyard, which overlooked a small lake in Michigan. And it was surrounded by trees and tall grass and bushes. And there was always a way, even though I was playing alone, that I felt that all of that creation was there with me, was a part of me, was watching over me. It is absolutely true. Creation listens. But there is a greater truth, and that is that creation not only listens, but it speaks. Paul Shepard, an environmentalist, says, the world is a part of our own body. Again, we go back to that interrelatedness of everything that is. We see the world as a part of our own body, part of our own skin. And then within that, there is that ability that nature listens. The movie, The Sound of Music, very much enraptured me as a young man. And as commercial as it is, in that opening scene, when Julie Andrews is on top of that mountain and she sings, "The world is alive with the sound of music. The world speaks." Jesus says, "Look at the birds of the air. Consider the lilies of the field." The world speaks to us, and all we need to do is listen. The spiritual world is hidden and perfectly revealed in the physical world. The material world is a hiding place of God, says Richard Roars. Let me read that one more time. The spiritual world is hidden and perfectly revealed in the physical world. The material world is the hiding place of God. It's Richard Roars. To me, as a city person, born and raised in the city, educated in the city, ministering in the city, I find that this relationship can be found as well within the city. It's not simply related to getting out to where the forest is or where the meadow is, but in the middle of the city, there are those places where nature can speak to us. I remember in Chicago, right outside the Art Institute, there is a small garden area. Just on the other side of it is Michigan Avenue. But in this little enclave of trees and shrubberies and everything, you can not only hear the traffic in the background, but you can hear the birds singing in this little park. There are other places as well scattered throughout that city, down by the canal, along the river. There was a place outside or just one block in from Michigan Avenue on the other side near the Miracle Mile, where there was a hospital, a patient I used to go see when I was ministering there. And then right across the street was this park. It was a very plain park, benches just around a square, but you could sit in that park and you could feel the peacefulness that would flood over you. And that is what I'm saying, that we are all in communion, and nature is in communion with us. It is speaking to us. When you walk through the woods, or you sit in that little park inside the city, and there is a sense of calm that overtakes you, that calm comes from nature speaking to you. Now, I want to go back for just a minute to Chautauqua and what all of this has to do with Chautauqua. To me, there are certain spaces, certain places where for you that veil between the sacred and the secular, between the temporal and the eternal, is tissue paper thin, or not at all. That is what Chautauqua is for me, and always will be. All throughout Chautauqua, there are those places of tall trees. And wherever you are in Chautauqua, you can look out over Lake Chautauqua. Every place there contains the possibility of being that thin place, of that place where the secular and the spiritual meet, where the temporal and the eternal come together. And you realize not a duality in life, even the duality of life and death, but a oneness. And it is at Chautauqua where I experience that oneness. O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you have made them all. Every place has that possibility of being that thin place where you are able to discern the oneness of all life, the presence of God's love for you. It just will be for you all that the incarnation is. To know these moments, to know these places, is to know union, that we are all one, that all is sacred, that God's Spirit resides in all that is. It is a union with God, a union with self, and a union with everything that is. The world is alive, and we are in relationship with it. Amen.